Oh, it's a beautiful Sunday evening here on the East Central Plains of Kansas as we carry 'em through Franklin, Anderson, Miami, Lynn, Osage, Johnson, Douglas counties on KOFO. It's Boomer Takes with Pete and Jake. Dr. Peter W. Tinsman, MD, John Jacobson, JD, yours truly here. We want to give a big shout out and welcome to our listeners in the Kansas City exurbs, including Olathe, as well as our friends who are listening in the capital of Topeka, where the legislature reconvenes tomorrow. The students up in Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, KU country there in Lawrence, plus our people listening in from Gardner Garnett, Princeton, Paola, Osage, Osawatomie, Wellsville, Williamsburg, here in Ottawa, Baldwin City, and the folks at Baker University, as well as Linden, as well as, well, guys, the whole East Central Prairie Plains here, where we're the number one country giant, your home and away voice of the Kansas City Royals and your surging Ottawa Braves and Ottawa Cyclones. Sean Torres, our engineer. We got fun stuff to talk about today on Boomer Takes with Pete and Jake. Pete, how are you, doctor?
Geez, John, I am doing just fantastic. Just fantastic.
You know,
love it.
The days are getting longer. The sun is rising.
I love it.
Yeah, the sun is rising about a minute earlier every morning and staying up a minute or two later every night. After 6 o'clock p.m. now, we're still got plenty of ambient light. It's not even dark after 6 p.m. We're making progress, Pete.
We are.
Somewhere I was thinking of us engaged in free, robust speech as undergrads at Creighton, evaluating who the most beautiful women's volleyball players were that we wanted to ask out for a movie date. That's what I remember when we were engaging in free speech in undergrad, Pete.
Yeah. Okay. So here's something with your undergrad, and I think people should think about this. So I just was I Googled what's the cost of Creighton University.
Yeah.
And so the cost of tuition right now is $50,000, room and board. Plan on spending $65,000 a year.
That's $250,000 for 4 years. $250,000.
That's a phenomenal amount of money.
Yeah.
And I think people should be thinking about, okay, so how good of an education am I going to get? And what sort of thoughts is the school going to put in my head? And there was never that concern, I think, that when we were at school. But there's obviously this, yeah.
Yeah, Pete, your point is great. And what I've seen kids here, what I admire about these kids that I teach at Ottawa, what I admired about my baby daughter when she did her undergrad at a traditional 4-year liberal arts. She was at a Catholic college up in Northwest Iowa that was an NAIA school in the GPAC conference. And I can say this about all my kids here at Ottawa. Pete, some of these kids are taking 18, 21 academic hours. The reason they can afford it here is, these 4-year liberal arts private colleges, they're very expensive too. They can be $50,000. But the thing is, there's a scholarship if you play sports, and my daughter got a partial scholarship. Most of these kids down here are on at least half a scholarship. And then they work retail. I'm walking when it's frigid in the winter. Instead of walking outside, I'll walk here in Walmart, my 10,000 steps a day. These kids are working Walmart or at the car wash or at the restaurant. I mean, fill in the blank. They're everywhere. And I'm thinking, what a bunch of hard work is. But what they're doing is they're taking that $50,000 tuition, maybe cutting it to 25 or 20. Of course, they're having to practice full-time, travel full-time, compete full-time, work out full-time. And, the work ethic is incredible. They're taking huge academic loads. They're working a ton of hours retail, and they're involved in sports, but that's how they make it affordable. And I'm sure there's still some student loan debt there, but it's not the $64,000 a year, And so essentially, they can go to school here for what it would cost to go to a state school, get the lower population density where their class size is 10 or 20. They get the professor teaching, not the grad student teaching. They get to play the sport that they love and still compete. And so we might talk a little bit more here in our next segment about the whole financing end of it. It helps to have parents that are supportive. But I'll tell you the story about how my daughter financed her master's when the father and daughter had a disagreement about where she would go to school. And it's kind of a cute story. My daughter showed me and accomplished her goal beautifully. But Pete, yeah, I mean, my wife and I made investment, and we took on some Parent Plus loans, but we felt that was a good return on investment for what we got in for, that would help our kids get to a position where they could, feed themselves, hopefully after we're even gone and out of the picture.
That's another story too, of being able to feed themselves after you're gone.
Yep.
But how many kids are picking something that pays them something that's an acceptable salary, but they're unhappy doing what they're doing?
Oh, yes.
And I would ask when I ask my patients, how's work? It's a paycheck. 90% would say it's a paycheck.
It's true. It's true. People are miserable. 10%
of people say they really loved what they did.
Pete, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
We could talk for days on that side of the,
Pete, I want to ask you, as a physician, what you saw. Of course, you were working with women expecting babies, a joyful time. Some of the women were able to be at home or have maternity leave. But would you say, as a physician in general, that dissatisfaction at the workplace, it really takes its toll on mental and physical health, doesn't it? Alcoholism, depression, lawyers have to take, it's mandatory now for continuing legal education to maintain our licenses. We have to take wellness classes now and DEI. We have to be indoctrinated with DEI and learn to hate ourselves under the DEI CLEs. But the wellness CLEs, I guess, helps restore us and make us feel better about ourselves. But Pete, it takes its toll.
Are you talking about medicine, John? Or are you talking about anybody's job?
I'm talking about anybody's job.
Oh yeah, anybody's job. The stress. Yeah, I mean,
lawyers have high rates of alcoholism, suicide, depression. That's why they've mandated it for lawyers to take these wellness classes to maintain their licenses. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering, and I don't know the answer to this question, but if we go back 60 years, if we go back to the 70 years in the 1950s, there had to have been the stress and the anxiety and the depression back then.
Except, Pete, I'll put an asterisk by that, Pete. Back then, you had a lifetime job.
Well, that's true.
People were not changing careers 8 times. Even if you were punching a clock, you were not laid off. You were not fired. There was a corporate loyalty where basically you could work somewhere from age of 21 to the age of 65 without worried about getting downsized or cut or fired or reorganized.
The employer had, they had responsibility to you, and,
yes.
And the employee was responsible, and everybody respected each other, and it's like, yeah.
And if you read the great business motivational books about how to be a great manager, Simon Sinek, read his stuff. He says, guys, you got to keep the troops safe, make the troops feel safe. And this is the problem now. It's chaotic. People are living from moment to moment in terror of losing their job. Pete, that's a big deal. The other big deal is there used to be formal pension plans within all of these corporate entities. And now I would say that healthcare costs have subsumed the benefits area so much that it's hard to put a lot of money in what would be even your 401k and 401k match, because the healthcare costs are just through the roof. And that's because we've now had all these middlemen rupturing the relationship between doctor and patient, and all these middlemen getting rich, and it costing an arm and a leg to save your arm and leg.
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
That's what we're teasing for next week. That's what we're teasing for next week's show, Pete, right now. But tease it. Give us a little sample.
Do I tease you?
Yeah, on where we're going here, on that whole concept.
With medicine?
Yeah.
With medicine?
Yeah, and healthcare costs.
All of my friends who are still working tell me, you are so fortunate you are not in this anymore, because it has gotten so bad.
Yeah,
healthcare in the United States has gotten so bad. Yeah. And I'm like, I have found a phenomenal doctor here in Florida. I just love him. He's fantastic. And when I've needed to see somebody else, he's known people to send me to. But like when my in-laws were here and they'd go into the hospital, I'd be like, what is going on here?
Oh, man. If you don't have an advocate, if you don't have an advocate for you in the hospital, you're in trouble, because the hospital's a very unsafe place to be these days.
Well, here's the whole thing. I'm convinced that if you're in the hospital, you need a family member who is in the medical field.
Totally.
Or a friend of yours in the medical field
Totally.
to help navigate things.
Totally.
And I'm not saying that friend's got to be a doctor, but it would be
Peter,
great if they were a nurse who worked in the hospital.
What you say is
or
true.
A respiratory therapist.
What you say is true. As a state legislator during COVID, I will tell you guys, people were put to death in hospitals. I will say that as long as I have a microphone. And I will further tell you that it is now being discovered, and the recent unrest in Minnesota and California and these places are showing it. You now have healthcare professionals, nurses and doctors, that say they will administer harm or refuse to treat people of a certain conservative political persuasion. It's a total violation of the Hippocratic Oath. What it is essentially, we have Dr. Joseph Mengele now practicing in American medicine as doctors and nurses. And Pete, you better have a zealous family advocate for you. And it's a really serious situation. And now you've got all these intermediaries, literally, that are going to ultimately dictate whether you get treated or not with good therapy or not.
Yeah. Well, there was a nurse down here in Florida. I don't know if it made national news. Go back a few weeks ago when they were announcing all these people in the White House who worked at the White House. These women were pregnant. And it's like, something's in the water.
Yep. This is a big story. It's a big story. Yeah.
And so there's a labor and delivery nurse here in Florida over on the East Coast. And she went on and posted a video of saying, she couldn't stand Trump, hated Carolyn Leavitt, and hoped that Carolyn Leavitt,
the beautiful young mother who is the press secretary, who's had one baby, who's just adorable
press
young
secretary
woman.
For Yep. Hope she had a 4th-degree laceration, which is when women deliver vaginally, they tear through the vagina and completely through into the rectum and through the anal sphincter. And she hoped that happened to her and that she could never have a normal bowel movement ever again in the rest of her life. Well, that nurse got fired the other day. And they said there is no place for your political language at work, and that we need to feel confident that our employees are going to take excellent care of our patients regardless of the political beliefs of the person you're caring for.
Well said, Pete. And I go back to the harrowing horrors of COVID, when the main protocol in these hospitals was remdesivir, which was a terrible drug with a terrible track record. They knew about it. They knew it was a poor performer. They knew it shut down kidneys in many cases. And then to compound that, they used the ventilators, which were the worst way to try to get oxygen into the lungs. Terrible protocols. And of course, the hospitals got rich coding people with COVID deaths as the moniker, as cause of death. Guys, the scales fell from my eyes. There has never been accountability. There's got to be accountability for those that cause these totally unnecessary deaths. There has to be accountability, and there has to be a way to prevent this ever from happening again.
John,
Pete,
John, how often, seriously, how often have we seen accountability?
We never see it. That's the problem. That's the problem.
How often it's kind of like Epstein files, accountability? No, sorry. COVID accountability? No, sorry. Anything, it seems like, people, you see people post things and then comments like Instagram for instance.
Peter,
they'll be like, okay, I hope this is true, but nobody ever gets arrested.
Peter, it's worse than that.
Goes to trial.
You know how it's worse than that, Peter? It's worse than that because in Iowa, the Board of Medicine went after the doctors who were curing people during COVID. They were punishing the ones who were curing everybody while, the hospitals were making money by putting people on those horrific ventilators after putting them on that horrific remdesivir. It's criminal, Pete, and frankly, it was murderous. It was murderous.
Well, I will say this much from a ventilator standpoint. Early on, I cut people some slack. Nobody really understood the fact that the inflammation and due to the virus attaching to these ACE2 receptors, a lot of them were in the lung, caused inflammation, which then caused these little blood clots all throughout the lung, which prevented the blood from being oxygenated
Right.
well. And so
Right.
the doctor said, well, let's put people on a ventilator, but then the ventilator, you would think that would make sense, but then the ventilator was causing damage and more inflammation and leading to more clotting and problems.
Trump was right. Trump was right, because he warned everybody when Cuomo in New York was saying, we don't have enough ventilators. Trump's got to get these ventilators. And Trump says, you'll have the ventilators, but he says, you don't want to. That's not the answer. And Pete, we had physicians that had the answer. We had physicians that were saturating these guys with oxygen, and they were recovering without ever going to the hospital, who were using hyperbaric air therapy. Air was the answer, oxygen was the answer, but not through those horrendous ventilators. And yet the hospitals, they would not allow the protocols of hyperbaric. They would not allow ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. And so I literally had doctors in Iowa curing everybody whose licenses were being threatened by the Board of Medicine. But Pete, it was just, people died wholly unnecessarily.
Well, hey, we were out to dinner 2 nights ago, and we're with a woman, and her mother-in-law, she goes, her mother-in-law was in a nursing home up in Maine, and was not allowed to have 0 visitors for 5 months. And she goes, that is when she became really demented, just being so isolated.
Oh, and it's like, people died in nursing homes from neglect because their family advocate could not be there. They died alone without family. They died without priest or clergyman there at their death. They got worse because there was no family member there. Absolutely correct, Pete. That's another heinous outcome of this.
My parents were in assisted living at that point, and they said, well, no, only one family member's allowed, and they did allow family members, but only one at a time for a limited period of time or something like that. And my brother was like, she's on the first floor. Let's just go around the back. We'll take the screen off the window, climb in through the window. And we can all see her together.
Pete, it was wicked what they did. And I'll tell you 2 other stories. My constituents, 2 anecdotes. I had some families whose relative was basically one of the only ones that survived the COVID ward or unit, so to speak. And you know how their relatives survived? In the one case, the family came in and sprinkled ivermectin in the salad when the doctors and nurses were out of the room, and they got better. In the other case, they had the ivermectin paste and they rubbed it on the foot of their loved one when the medical personnel were not in the room. And guess what? They got better.
Yeah. It'd be great to see study, that's a subject for another talk, John.
Pete, we've talked so greatly today. We have 2 episodes worth here. We've been talking for almost an hour here, and this has just been fertile.
John,
fertile ground. Yeah, Pete.
Just tell you, I'm headed to Sri Lanka on Monday and the Maldive Islands, and I'm going to be gone, and I won't be back at home until February 18th. We leave February 2nd. We're back on the 18th.
Well, even perfect. We just recorded 2 shows here today, and we've got some other greatest best ofs, Pete. So this was absolutely pitch perfect today. So Pete, you're heading out on this big trip. As a doctor, travel recommendations for how to stay healthy. Traveling, you're
Don't
on
drink
an
the water.
You're on an airplane with all that air that everybody's breathing in. Take a few extra vitamins. What do you recommend, Pete, to stay healthy while on the road?
I take lots of vitamins and supplements every single day, and you just have to hope your immune system is strong. They say on these airliners, the air is completely recirculated in the cabin or completely exchanged every 2 to 3 minutes. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've heard people saying, I take betadine and I swab my up inside my nose with betadine. Okay, I've never done any of that, but...
What about the water? Is your water going to be good over there in your food?
No.
If you brush into a plant with your leg, are you going to get some sort of rash or fungus? I mean, those types of things, are those ever a concern?
Well, you don't drink the water. Because you'll get diarrhea from the water. But there's a virus over in southern India. In some places, it's Nipah. It's Nipah, I think, is what it is.
My engineer is nodding his head. He's familiar with the
40 to 40% mortality rate. Yeah, comes from fruit. Comes from fruit bats, but it's like you get it by being bitten by a fruit bat. eating contaminated fruit from the feces or the saliva of the fruit bat, or being in close contact with bodily fluids of somebody who is infected. So
oh my goodness.
I think we'll be okay. I just told my wife, I said to Heather, I said, don't eat any fruit.
Wow.
I think we'll be okay.
So, well, we are very blessed here in America. We've got the technology, and actually, Pete, we'll talk about this another time. I've got physicians that are curing glioblastomas, and they're using such things as, oxygen therapy, hydrogen therapy, glutathione precursors, fenbendazole, ivermectin. It's really incredible. And Pete, final flourish here. I don't know enough about it, but I saw some superb news. A physician has found what they believe is a cure to at least some of the forms of pancreatic cancer. Have you been tracking that story? It's incredible.
Okay, are you talking about the guy in California, Korean guy?
He's got a big birthmark on his face. It's that doctor who, I don't know if it's the same one you're thinking of, but a claimed cure for pancreatic cancer.
Well, there's this guy, and his name is Patrick, I'm going to say Schoon or something like that. And our next door neighbor here, she has a very close friend up in Indianapolis who is seeing this guy because this gal's got stage 4 ovarian cancer. And I talked to this woman on the phone about 2 weeks ago of everything she does and what she's going through. And so this guy, he is doing something. He has a drug that is supposed to activate natural killer cells in our body, which go and attack the cancer.
Wow, do you know his name? That is not the same guys I'm referring to. I'm talking about Dr. Mariano Barbacid, a Spanish scientist, have cured pancreatic cancer in mice. The Spanish National Cancer Research Center.
So this guy's name is Patrick Soon, S-O-O-N hyphen Xiong. I guess he's Chinese. It's S-H-I-O-N-G. And he's a billionaire.
Wow.
And he has, and he has some drug, Abraxane. Yeah, Abraxane, and I can't remember what its trade name is, what he called it. But yeah, Patrick Soon Xiong, and I saw him on the TV, and he's got like 13,000 people who want to see him, and they can only see 20 or 30 at a time because of FDA regulations, trying to get this drug approved for everybody to use. He sees somebody, it's an approval for just one person at a time is the way I understand it.
Well, Bobby Kennedy and Trump are doing great things in expanding the right to try on these cures. I give great credit to President Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This physician that's done the pioneering possible cancer cure on pancreatic cancers. Again, his name is Dr. Mariano Barbacid, B-A-R-B-A-C-I-D, Barbacid, at the Spanish National Cancer Research Center. We'll keep updating these things. Pete, great to be with you as always, my good friend now of 47 years, Peter, almost 50 years of friendship.
Well, geez, that's something. That's crazy, John. That's really crazy. And because I think I'm still 35 years old.
Well, I was really glad that you were a groomsman at our wedding. Those were great days. And
same, John. You were a groomsman at our wedding.
You had the summer wedding. We had the winter wedding. They were both fun. And we both ended up honeymooning with our brides in Kansas City. So, Kansas City is the epicenter. Kansas City and Eastern Central Plains of Kansas Radio, John Jacobson for Dr. Peter W. Tinsman, and Sean Torres, our super engineer here at KOFO. Catch the podcast on KOFO.com on our podcast page. Until we meet again, be safe, be smart, be good, be strong. Love Jesus Christ. We're heading into the season of Lent as we march towards springtime and Easter. Until we meet again, God bless us, everyone. Bye-bye.